Thank you for joining me today. I'm Rob Anson, CEO and founder of Phobi AI. It's a real pleasure today to sit with Sarah Bramley and Aaron Pritchett. So let's jump into Aaron. Let's talk a little bit about yourself for the audience. And obviously, I'm very familiar with you and all that you do and the great music and whatnot, and big fan. But let's kind of rewind and level set here for those at home that are listening or watching today as to a little bit about yourself and background, where you came from. For me, I'm always about what drives the person and the passion. And I think for you, your story is very, very impressive for me as to see the progress and where you are and how we met. So take it away.
Well, I guess the long and short of it is I'm a BC born and bred. Just your atypical guy, really, who grew up with the love of hockey and the love of our beautiful province. And born in Vancouver, raised kind of all over BC, so I've seen it all. And as a child, I moved to places like the Fraser Canyon, lived there for quite a while, lived up in Kitimat, which is northern part of the West Coast, and into places like Kamloops and Kelowna, and eventually ended back up in the Lower Mainland, in the Vancouver area, Langley mostly, North Delta, as well as Abbotsford. And then, decided to move to a little island off of Nanaimo, on Vancouver Island, called Gabriola, which we're looking at today. And from there, decided to move to the big city, back to the big city of Nanaimo. And
The big city, yeah.
And here I am now, but I'm a country singer. I got into country music I got listening to it in the early, I guess, mid-'80s, I should say. And it was one of those things where I just connected with it. It was rootsy, the stories were real. And when it came to my lifestyle of living in places like Kitimat and, Boston Bar, British Columbia, out in the middle of nowhere, it felt like, and fishing and hunting and just being a country boy, I really related to that. So I gravitated towards that type of music and became a country singer through getting a band together in Langley when I was living in Langley. And it just sort of grew, and people liked what I was doing and liked hearing the voice and watching the show that I was building at the time. And it just turned into a nationwide thing. So after releasing music in the late 90s, early 2000s, radio really liked what I was doing, and so did the fans, which was very important for me. And became, I guess, a nationwide artist that traveled through the country as far east as you can go to as far west and as far north as you could possibly go too. So, and from there, I guess the country music career has led me to not only being putting on shows and making people happy, but also understanding that philanthropy is a big part of my soul. And I need to not only entertain people, but I need to have my name help people raise money for those in need, whatever charities that may be. And that's led us to like yourself.
So I guess for me, I always look at, who do I look up to? And so as a young country artist, aspiring country artist, who were your influencers growing up?
Well, there was a number. I guess the one main person who got me into country music was Randy Travis. And I think it was about 1987. I'd heard this country guy who was dressed kind of strange. And for the country music at that point, he was an anomaly. His voice was extremely unique. He had this deep voice on him, but he also dressed in a sort of an old-fashioned kind of suit. Was a good-looking guy, and the industry thought, whoa, this is just too much for us. But he got people's attention like myself and became this massive star. Further to that's what got me into listening to country music, but further to what got me into becoming a country artist was obviously Garth Brooks. For so many people, he put on a show. It was kind of a rock show.
True
for
entertainer.
A country guy. He was a very, very much so, and still is to this day. And that really got me into listening to his music and understanding what he was doing. He wasn't just telling the stories, but he was also putting on an act to entertain people and make them feel great when they come to these shows. And that's what I wanted to do. That's really what I wanted to do. And that my goal was not to become rich and famous. It was, those are the side effects of making people feel good. And that's really what I wanted to do, is let people have fun, escape from their, maybe normal lives and regular lives, and put on a show for 90 minutes. And that's really what it was.
I think that's interesting. So I met Randy Travis, I think this is probably going back 38 years ago.
So you were just a baby.
Yeah, I was back then. Young boy, and we had a property up on the Sunshine Coast in small town of Penner Harbor. And back in the day, that used to be one of the fishing hot spots and whatnot. And very fortunate my family had property up there, so I got to spend all my summers up there. And for me, it was kind of to your point of the entertainment. It's almost like a release from reality, where for me it was always the crackle of the fire, right? The laughs around the fire, the stories, young boy listening to a story. One evening, Randy Travis was up, not filming, but producing a new record. And my uncle had brought him up as a guest of his, and he was sitting around the campfire with his acoustic guitar and singing. And I was just blown away by the voice. Right? I had no idea who the guy was, but as a young boy, but I was just in awe of the voice. And for me, it was the storytelling that I kind of took to the country myself at a young age. And I had the pleasure of getting to attend Garth Brooks in a very quaint setting. He was filming down in the Wynn years ago that Mandy and I got to go to, and all we walked in was, I didn't know a lot about Garth Brooks, but I saw the stuff on YouTube of him flying around in this 80,000, seat arena capacity, and the showmanship. I mean, he was just rocking it. And we walked into the Wynn Theater, and I was like, whoa, where's the band here? There was just a stool and an acoustic guitar. Then literally he walked out in his faded pair of jeans and his Connor's Adidas shoes and shirt all untucked and hat on backwards, and picked it up, and I'm Garth Brooks and here's my story. So he started going through all the early influences, but once again, it was a story, and it was a relation to someone it was a memory and experience. And I think, for myself, engaging and connecting with people, it's always about that story and experience. And much like philanthropy, as you said, is growing up with yourself in, small town, very modest upbringing. When you experience all these things, you appreciate the little moments, right? And it's those little moments where you can give back and make a difference, like the two of you do. So it's very compelling to me to understand even more about the background. So that's very exciting. So Sarah, you're a whole other story. You're a fireball and a half, that's for sure. So tell us, I guess, a bit about your background first and foremost, because that's very interesting. And then about the two of you, how did you guys come together?
So small town girl. I was born in Prince George, grew up on Vancouver Island, and I'm just so incredibly fortunate that this is where I call home and always have. A lot of people want to move away from their hometown, and it's how do you move away from this? We're just very fortunate. But my childhood, I'm just an only child. My parents are here. The rest of my family is back in England. And I've just always really just been connected with community. There wasn't a lot around me all the time, so it was connect with the neighbors. When I was at school, everybody knew each other. And it's always been a lot of those moments, those little things that have always counted. I was always very active within school, because with it being a small town and a small school, everybody had to chip in. So it's just kind of that was literally part of my education and part of the fabric of growing up. So went to university, had a bunch, you name it, I've had that job. But the one thing I've always went back to is there needs to be more substance to it. I appreciate and respect anyone who goes to work, comes home, and that's what it is. But for me, it needs to have more substance. It needs to have a bigger picture. It needs to give impact. Like I've always had that socially conscious buying kind of side of me. Or if we're going to do an event, how much more impact can we do? How do we make sure that the donors or sponsors have had the best experience again? So they want to come back. So basically my education and my jobs kind of transformed me to where I am now. And where that is, I'm not exactly sure. It seems to be a little bit of everything, but it's definitely nonprofit focused or small business. That's where we really need to focus a lot of attention. And so whether it's fundraising or communications, putting on events, marketing, it's about everybody getting a piece of that pie, piece of the prosperity of whatever it is, and being able to make more impact.
For sure, it's always, as you said, it's about giving opportunity to those that everyone just needs a break once in a while, right? And very fortunate, like I said, when someone hands you an opportunity, say yes and figure out how to do it later.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting, the connection of the small town, because it's kind of the old school throwback is to appreciation and more of a community, where big city is, we have pods and clusters, of course, but when you look at a rally point, it is usually around community. It's usually around, the elderly, the youth, and giving everyone an opportunity to thrive and succeed. So tell me, how did you guys get connected? And
That's exactly how we got connected. Ironically enough, we're one day away, less than 24 hours away from an event that back pre-COVID 2019, Aaron was the hired talent. So I bought Aaron. We hired Aaron as our talent. We knew that he would put on a great show. One of the committee members, there's 4 of us in total, said that he's seen Aaron perform live and puts on a great performance. Let's bring him into the mix. So the fundraiser, Aaron came in and he was doing sound check, and I was there first thing in the morning. And he actually came over, sat down, and said, I didn't know this was a fundraiser. Tell me more about it. Who's Garrett? Why is this happening? And just genuinely asked questions and cared. He didn't have to. He could have done his sound check, left to his hotel, and kept going. And I said, there's something special about him, because that's not always the case. A lot of people, you get asked, like that's literally your job, is like you get asked left, right, and center to go do give backs or perform, and he genuinely cared why he was there and why he was hired.
I was just being nice because you're cute.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
But then, throughout that conversation, he was said, oh, like you must know a lot of things about like fundraising and events and that. And I said, that's literally what I do.
Yeah.
And the conversation continued, and he said, I have a ton of ideas, like we should sit down and chat about them. And obviously, just once again, that opportunity, it said, there was something calling me that there's a bigger picture, and there's more to this human than just putting on a great performance and maybe a cool idea. And, the event in 2019 was incredibly successful, our most successful to date. Hopefully tomorrow will be even more successful. But yeah, that's kind of where this all started, is we had a common bond about giving back to community and making good social impact and seizing opportunity.
Yeah, and I saw in Sarah that day, I mean, it was an instant thing where, she's running around getting all these details figured out. And when I did want to talk to her and genuinely was curious what I was doing there, other than just, putting on a show, they were raising money for something, and I did want to know more. She did have to kind of blow me off at one point, because she said, I have so much I have to do. And there was, some dynamics that were happening behind the scenes as well that you just don't know about. And I thought, well, that's great. She seems to be so focused on what she's doing, and it seems to be working, because this is a really great event. And the show went off without a hitch, and she was very attentive to us. And then we struck a friendship after that. I had just recently moved to Nanaimo the year prior, but hadn't really had time to get out and meet people. So for me, this was a way to actually make a friend when I first, started having some free time at home. And then we just ended up staying good friends and getting closer, and eventually led to where we are today as a couple, but also dynamically with the charity aspect of things. We've had many things happen since then that have been successful, and it's a result of her hard work and focus.
No, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about how we met.
Yeah.
Which is a funny story. Is we have a mutual acquaintance that I'd no idea. We hadn't met yet, and we were playing at the Adam Hadwin GVCI charity event at Morgan Creek, and I got paired up with Marco Iannuzzi for the first time, and it was like a long lost frat brother or something. We had just a tremendous day and a lot of good laughs, and we shared information, of course, after the event, and I think it was barely a week later. It was a Friday afternoon, which I scooted out of the office early. I was out having a couple of beers on the boat and fishing and enjoying the West Coast as we do here. And I got the phone call from Marco going on about, am I playing in a golf tournament in Nanaimo? And Marco, there's a lot of golf tournaments here. I got no idea what you're even talking about. And he's like, oh, it's Aaron and Sarah's tournament. I'm like, well, who are Aaron and Sarah? So, my assistant Susan hooked us all up, and got all the information, and then we connected. And like I said, it's to me the inspiration and motivation within people is who's part of the group, and what are we really trying to accomplish here. So the minute that we spent, I don't know, at least an hour, I think, speaking the first time as to the event, and we can get into that in a minute. But I think one thing I appreciate about you, Sarah, was, you told me I'm someone that makes shit happen.
Yep.
Right. And that's exactly, myself. And I've always been that way. When, I'm involved in something, I'm all in, and it's all in or nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's what's, driven me to success, and some of the things that I've accomplished in my life is that mentality. If we're going to do it, it's going to be the best event possible. So it was great then to learn and understand about the Big Wheel charity event. So good story there as to what you thought you were preparing for, and it was a lot more refined schedule. So maybe share with people some detail about the Big Wheel event.
Okay, so Aaron had an idea that he always wanted to host his own golf tournament. He has a passion for golf. He has lots of friends that wanted to participate, the give back to charity piece, and I was like, okay, golf tournament, that's easy. They're a lot of work, but the main blueprint of a golf tournament's pretty straightforward. So we went to a local golf course here in Nanaimo, and we have a great relationship with the owners, and just said, we want to sit down and talk about a golf tournament for 2023, because naturally you would plan a year in advance. Yeah. And we walked out of there within an hour with a date for 2022, which was 7.5 weeks from that date.
From that date.
And we didn't have a name for it. We didn't have branding. We didn't have a single golfer. We didn't have a sponsor, nothing. And somehow we were able to pull that off. It was incredibly successful. I truly believe that everyone that participated, whether they were a golfer, a volunteer, or a sponsor, did feel like they had value and did feel that it was a great experience.
Well, sorry to interrupt you, but when you say experience, to me, that's the most important thing.
Totally.
Whether it's a show or something like this, you're a product of your environment, as they say, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I get invited to a lot of charity golf events, and most of them are very subdued and quite boring, to be honest. Yep. What I loved about this, this was every hole was a rock show. Like straight out of the gate, pre-kickoff with the DJ spinning tunes and, cocktails and that energy, such good energy. Yeah. And that just transpired and rolled over to every hole, right? And that's what people remember. And people, of course, with social influence, as we all have today, and we live through, you expand that energy, right, to the social community. And, as you said to me, that you had people during the event even, how do I become part of this next year? How do I sponsor? How do I be part of, I want to be part of this thing any way possible. That, obviously goes to the testament as to the success of what you guys were able to pull off. And, we were happy to be able to, same thing, roll up the sleeves and jump in and bring as many people as we could, and myself personally, and network and Phobi, the technology to, create that sort of seamless operational standpoint. So I look forward to next year's event, and I'm almost a little scared to see what
well, the ideas
that looks like.
The ideas that are being passed around now are pretty good, and really, when you look at most golf tournaments, and nothing against any other golf tournament I've ever been to as a charity golf tournament or a celebrity sort of driven tournament, this one, I really wanted to make sure that the experience was that golf was almost secondary. Golf was still played and had fun doing it, but really we wanted the experience to be something completely different from anything that anybody's ever done before. And with my trepidation going, is this gonna work? Are people gonna like this? Maybe this is annoying. Sarah's, she kind of went, you wait and see. And then after the fact of all the things that Sarah had planned, I went, wow, I'm so glad that this is the way you planned on having this happen, because that's what I want. I want people to be entertained, and not only just the experience of having fun golfing with great people, but also the little events going on at each hole and knowing that they're raising money.
Well, it's that engagement, right? Yeah. That was the differentiator for me, was you've got great businesses that were there to provide their products and services, which is great for them, getting out brand awareness, of course, and giving back as well. But I think it's, to that point, I mean, the music on the holes and the interactive games, and, it was like Waste Management Open, but in Nanaimo, BC here. It was quite something, right? And I think once again, it's about the experience that people always remember. And we had tremendous output in the silent and live auction. I mean, live auctioneer was fantastic and another level as well. And like you said, you guys had a lot of great cast of characters, which I think brought good balance to it. There's the humility on some degree, and the over the top, characters, which you need, right? And I think that it was a 74,000.
Yep.
Just
under 74,000 for a first year event in a small town like this. Just shows what can be done when people rally behind something. So,
but that's like a testament to Phobi too. It's like when we're turning around and saying we were able to, organize this tournament in 7.5 weeks, we met 6 days prior to. I didn't even know who Phobi was.
Yeah.
And now that's all I can think about. And, it was your team that also pulled up their sleeves, jumped right in and made it happen. And that's community, that's support, that's what's going to make a difference in the world. So it's pretty big.
So let's talk about Garrett. You've mentioned Garrett Paquette.
Yeah.
Let's give a little bit of background there. Obviously, we're very excited to be part of this year's event, raising a $100,000 goal for 10 different charities. So tell us a bit about this year's Seafood Extravaganza.
Yeah, so the Garrett Paquette Seafood Extravaganza is, we're finally having our 10th anniversary, because of course there's a little bit of a hiatus there. Garrett Paquette actually was a born and raised gentleman of Nanaimo who unfortunately passed away on Remembrance Day. And he was fundraising for Movember, so Momo. That's where the Momo piece comes into a lot of the marketing.
Hence
and that.
The stash.
That's the only reason. But so we, the first year right after he passed away, his father and a few of us got together and just said, we need to raise money under Garrett's name, because he only had maybe a couple thousand in his little Movember fundraiser pot. And we had the first annual Seafood Extravaganza. So his father, Roger Paquette, owns a seafood company. He brought in multiple different types of seafood. Everybody rallied around, and we raised over $100,000 that year for Garrett. And to Movember. We continued that because it was so successful, and why not continue the legacy of giving and generosity? So we have hosted it a few more times. We decided, you know what, Garrett really believed in his community. He really believed in helping the underdog. If there's the guy sitting at the table by himself versus the big crowd of people, he'd go over to the guy that was sitting by himself and just hey, what's going on? And he was just that kind of a person. So we now are year 10, and we decided to do the 10 for 10 challenge. So that's the $10,000 for 10 charities locally here in Nanaimo. We tried to kind of separate, so we had that whole spectrum of communities. So we have groups that support seniors, individuals with developmental disabilities, food security, housing. We've kind of got a plethora to really touch base on all different aspects of our community. And the event is the Seafood Extravaganza, which this year we will have just over, I think we're at 25, 26 items of freshly caught seafood.
Yeah, that kind of blew my mind when you're telling me about this.
The menu is insane.
It's quite something.
Yeah, so cocktail hour, we have the ice bar going with shucked oysters, and they'll be frying up gooseneck barnacles all the way through to, dinner. We've got Dungeness crab and spot prawns and salmon, and everything's fresh. We have Digby scallops getting flown in. Like, everything is fresh and amazing.
Sea urchin.
Sea urchin.
A bunch of other things that
You
quite honestly I never even heard of.
Yeah.
No, same here.
I was like Googling away, trying to figure out what is this?
Like, how do you prepare it? What do you do?
Yeah.
So everybody gets to try something, and it's literally all you can eat. Like, there's so much seafood. It's just amazing. We'll have the regular part of the buffet.
So then there'll be an auction as part of this year, and some of the prizes to give away for that. Raise a bunch of money there, and then there's some of the music.
Yeah, so we have cocktail hour music, and then we have dinner music, as well as, of course, after dinner music, and that's when the party starts with this guy right here. And and then the
Well,
live
it doesn't
and
start
silent
with
auction.
me, it ends with me.
That's true.
There's the Banks brothers are good friends of ours. They're from Victoria. Two brothers, obviously, that are Morgan and Nelson Banks. They're phenomenal. They've got such a bright future. As well as Ryan McMahon, who's from Ladysmith, just down the road from us.
Unbelievable
and another great
singer-songwriter.
performer, unreal songwriter and singer as well. And then my son and his fiance, Jordan and Danielle, who are also known as Cross Parallel.
Yeah, that's right.
They're going to do about an hour set, and then I go on and try and yell in key.
So yeah, it's a great evening, and we basically, how it works is we just want everyone there to have a great experience again, right? And it's, once again, thank you for Phobi for jumping on board. I don't know how much of a choice I really gave you. I kind of cornered you on it, but we, helping us with our wallet ticketing, and just making, trying to get 400 people into one venue smoothly and easily, and not paper form and all of the above. It's just, it's a lot of people to be able to
Well, it goes
herd.
with the experience, as we talked about earlier, right? When you're, people only have so much money to sponsor for different events and stuff, and where we look at, why do we get involved is my first thing, right? Kid sport was obviously mutual synergy on the last one. And we played in the Nanaimo Kid Sport event together, where
a couple days later.
That was fun and interesting,
Yes.
right? But I think for us, it's once again about the experience, right? As to, community is always a good thing, but it's a great showcase. I mean, for companies such as ourselves as well, learning every exercise that we do as to how do we improve. And, we were pretty fortunate, starting grounds with the Oscar Academy Awards was a big event. So some of these smaller ones is people are like, why are you even doing that? Right. And I think for us, like I said, it's a great audience. It's a showcase. As a publicly traded company, people like to see, what is Rob really about? What is the company really about? How is the technology utilized? And one of the gentlemen actually from your event to the Big Wheel came up to me and introduced themselves, and he's like, hey, Rob, wasn't even really a part of this event, but he says, I saw the press release, and he said, I had to come down here to see the technology in action and donate to the event.
Wow, that's great.
And it was super cool. And he's emailed me a few times with some other great ideas, of course, as to how we can, help the communities and use the technology to give back as well. So tell me a bit about, I guess, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
You guys have a lot of other events and stuff. is this something where you're looking to move and create like a foundation, if you will, that you can build off of and create your own sort of identity now that, I don't want to say your music career's, you know, on the down path, of course, but you know, you and I have talked about, you know, what drives you to keep going, and you know, legacy now is to what do you want to be remembered for, and these sorts of things.
That's just it. Musically, I don't think I'll ever get away from Hold My Beer. It is my musical legacy, and I'm okay with that. I'd never have a problem with that ever. But when it comes to me as a person, a personal legacy, I'd like to be remembered for somebody who really cared about the community, cared about the people in his country that need help, that are in need of any kind. And that's really the bottom line. And not to be a hero, I definitely don't have a hero complex. I just understand that my career got to a level where people do know my name and would like to pay a few dollars to come out and watch me perform. And if that means those few dollars go to somebody else who needs it, is in dire need of it, then great. Yeah, with the golf tournament, it's called Big Wheel Charity Golf Classic for a reason, because Big Wheel was a song of mine that came out in 2006 that was a big hit back then. But we tried to start a foundation. We haven't quite finished the foundation process, but we do have a society that we've created. And we've named that the New Frontier Philanthropic Society after a song of mine called New Frontier that did really well back in 2004. So those are the types of things that I'm known for, those songs with those names. They're relatable to me as a person, recognizable. And I wanted those to be sort of the legacy of their own. To, you know, it might have been my name and Sarah and I behind it, but I wanted those songs to be recognized, and then those to be related to raising money. New Frontier makes sense. You know, Big Wheel is just sort of one of those things that goes well with a golf tournament and has a good ring to it. But a new frontier for everybody and everyone for the next generations to come.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you guys here today and chat around the fire and this
Thanks for having
Remembrance
us.
Day.
Yeah.
Of course, I look forward to the event tomorrow. And
Don't eat too much today.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, thanks for everyone tuning in today and joining us next time.